Heck yeah.
Yeah. The first thing I would do is getting your monitor, aside from calibrating it, is having your monitor at the right luminance. Now, just because you've calibrated it and whatever the default recommended luminance was, does not mean that that is the proper luminance.
Brightness or darkness, yeah.
Brightness of your display for your working environment. And just as a note, we were talking earlier, in my office where I have a diffused light source and very even lighting, I'm at 113.
I'm at 70.
He's at 70.
It's perfect.
It's a sweet spot for me.
But I'm in a very mellow, diffused room. Not dark. I would say yours is a little on the bright side for me, than what I'd be used to. But I definitely don't work in the dark.
Yours is just right?
I'm used to.
Goldilocks.
That makes sense. Yeah. 70 to 113. 113 is pretty surprising to me, actually. But you said 70 was surprising to you.
Yeah.
So I work in a more
So that's very, very important. And there's a good trick, good rule of thumb that I use, and that is in your work environment, you should have a little light for proofing. And if you're not sure about what I'm talking about or how that should look, you can go on the Nevada Art Printers website, and under FAQ, we have a tutorial with some images illustrating getting your monitor or your environment correct. Mm-hmm. But the trick is, under your proofing light, if you had a sheet of white photo paper, and
so the proofing light's simulating the brightness that print would typically be.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Under.
So your display conditions, or your reflective source, and you fill your display with white, like a document in a Word editor or in Photoshop, 255.
Pure white document.
255.
Yep.
If you put that sheet of white paper there,
especially
and you look at your display,
printer paper.
Yeah, printer paper, photo paper.
If you could get like a white piece of photo paper.
White photo paper. If your display is blazing bright compared to that photo paper, that print is never going to be as bright or have the same tonal relationships as your display.
Not even close.
And if it's the opposite, the opposite's true. So that's a very intuitive rule of thumb or way to look at it as to why monitor brightness is so important.
Yeah, that's an awesome tip. I remember when I was making my very first prints, I'd just make a test print because I didn't know anything about calibration, didn't know anything. And I'd just take the print and stick it right here and have the monitor right here. And I'd make sure I wasn't in like a dark environment. I was just in a decent environment that a print might be under. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, these look so different, And then I'd just try to guess, okay, that looks too saturated, take the saturation down 10 points. Or I need a little more contrast, a little more brightness, But calibration plus just getting the brightness of your monitor down. And it's down compared to web or just, online. Online is...
Yeah, because that proper brightness is going to affect all of the adjustments in the way you go about doing it. And if you've done it wrong from the get-go, it can be pretty difficult to get it to where you really wanted it, afterwards.
Yeah, and print, I love this word you brought up in one of the workshops that we did. He said print-centric workflows. People who are going to be processing their images more for print than for like web display or online display, which is the minority of people, but printing people will be watching this, so and I get a lot of people that are really serious about making prints. If they're into a print-centric workflow, a workflow that's more important to get the print right, and then they can tweak it for online, that's an awesome way to go. Start in RAW with the darker monitor. And the next one for me, I'd say, is white background. White background around, or canvas background, they call it. Instead of gray or black or whatever. Yeah,
black is good for the web, but it's the wrong way to go about it for prepping for print. And incidentally, if you're in Lightroom and you go to proof in Lightroom, Lightroom defaults to the white background when you're in
Soft proof.
Soft proof. So
To make it look like a particular print.
where he mentioned in Photoshop you have to go in and manually do that.
Right click on your canvas with your cursor, and then it has these options. And
Custom color.
Custom color, yeah. And if you don't see white there, it'll say custom color. You click into that, and you can choose whatever you need. For web, I like more times than not, at least as of this video interview, I'm posting to Instagram first, and then maybe Facebook or these other places. Well, Instagram's a white background, so I'm just kind of sticking with white. And then when I need to make a separate one for like a black background or a gray background, I'll just switch it, make a couple of tonal tweaks, and then for web, yeah. But always white. It takes some getting used to. Yep. I would rather work on like a dark gray, just so much easier on the eyes, and
everything seems to look better.
Everything seems to look better, but no.
Yeah,
that's one of the most important ones. How about any others stand out to you?
Well, a lot of the camera techniques. Shooting with the lowest ISOs you can. Pulled ISO 50, whatever.
Shoot to the right is still really important today.
Yep, shoot to the right. Don't crank that lens down to f/22 or f/16. It's you're basically going to just have a softer picture that you're going to wind up trying to sharpen harder and creating more noise.
Yeah, that's a good one. f/8 to f/11 on a lot of lenses is the sweet spot.
Yep.
Usually like around 11, so you get good corners too. I asked you a question one time. I think it was last year. I asked you how much percentage of prints come in with this particular damage built in, and it's because also on the images that I'm constantly working on, I have a very high percentage. So your numbers are equal, at least what you said then equals today what I'd have to deal with. But about 80% of the images that come to me from gallery photographers or photographers who just want, me to prep their work for print, they have their default sharpening on in Lightroom or Camera Raw, and it's not ideal for anything in the entire photo. For capture sharpening, before you size it up.
Yeah, or they've over-sharpened it.
Yeah, or they've over-sharpened it.
Oh, because they were overly zealous about detail, or they were on a 4K or 5K display.
Oh, man. Yeah, so, okay, before we go there, for me, I tell them a lot of times, that's one of the first things I'm coaching people that are sending me files to prep is turn off the capture sharpening. Unless you're a master and you really know how to use it, then just turn it off. That's the best thing. And then also, we're always dealing with noise. So that's the low ISO, and handling noise is sophisticated. What was the next one you said? You were just bringing up?
Oh, I was mentioning the 4K, 5K.
Oh. You really want to go there? Do we want to disappoint people?
That's not the quick takeaway, but
I just say no 5K, no 4K, no laptops. If you're serious about making a print, your feedback of what you're looking at, telling you what this is going to look like or not look like, it has to be a 30-inch or a 27-inch QHD, or what is that, 2550 by
2560 by like 1440.
Yeah, 1440 exactly. And I have a 27-inch and 30-inch or whatever, but I have them side by side. You just can't see what you need to be able to see.
Yeah.
The bottom line on that one is the pixel density is too much. Even the laptops is just too small, or even it's just not right for the laptops either, to where like you can be grossly over sharpening your image and you'll never know.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of a 2.5K display.
Oh yeah.
If you thought about it, the 4K, 5K, 2.5.
It's always disappointing for people, but the cool thing is that like you could afford any monitor on the planet. Because that's also the most important. That's more important in almost any piece. Your printer is very important too. Yeah. But it's all.
But that's
important.
your direct portal into your file.
Yeah, exactly. That's your full feedback, and people would be surprised you don't have a $10,000 monitor. We have many monitors, but your two monitors side by side you could get factory refurbished. I'd never get a refurbished one unless it was factory refurbished, but I've seen them in the $500 range, and then up around $1,200 or something like that for
new,
brand new. Yeah, like a Dell Ultra Sharp 30-inch or NEC or ISA or BenQ.
UP3017, you know.
Yeah. I have both the 27, and I also have the Pixel. I have the 0.3 millimeter, and I have the 0.27 millimeter right next to each other.
Pitch, yeah,
they're close, but the 0.3 is definitely the best. That's the 30-inch.
Yeah.
And I have them side by side. I have one I have not to slam Apple or anything. I mean, I would still keep the 5K iMac. I just plug it into another monitor and just use that one monitor.
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive to what you would think, but that ability to finally discern the individual pixels and get, you know, all of those critical things in the raw development right, if you're going to make an enlargement, because as we've talked about, those little details become big details. It's of paramount importance. And the selling tools that the manufacturers are using to sell new products aren't necessarily optimized for what the photographer wants.
Yeah, even it's sort of like the TVs. Sometimes I teach off of big HD TVs, and sometimes they have a gross amount of sharpening and a gross amount of contrast, or just these crazy things going on their
dynamic
displays.
Contrast, all this stuff for video.
And a TV is a display, a monitor is a display, display is a display. So there's different types, but they're not necessarily making monitors, except for some companies with photographers in mind. It's graphics and this and that, and I think the biggest market is just your average consumer. So
your average consumer, or whatever the next latest greatest thing that they can sell you is. I mean, interesting. BenQ, they make a photographer's display. That's what they call it, the photographer's display, and it's QHD 2560. That says a lot.
I think it's 27-inch though, right?
It's a 27-inch. Yeah.
I think I prefer the 30.
Yeah, the 30 is better. If you have the space, bigger is better.
Now 30-inch displays look small to me. I just might as well point it out. I tried my hardest with everything I had. High intensity. I am going to make a quality file off of this laptop. And
good luck.
No, I was not. I could suffice for web, and even then it suffered even for just display web, but for print, not even close. And I also remember when I got the 4K, 5K monitors and I started capture sharpening a file I was extremely familiar with. I'd processed it 100 times. I knew it needed, to the point, I knew how much sharpening it needed. And I brought it up to that, and I went 5 points more, 10 points more, 15, 20, 30. And I was like, I just destroyed this image and I can't see it. So then it's like, well, zoom up closer. Well, then it's like too big and you can't evaluate it. Well, go down smaller. That's too small. So the way these are set up, the way we need to see things is very specific. It's 100% viewing distance on your native file is your main feedback for capture sharpening, and then for print 300 pixels per inch, 50%, and once in a while I'll look at it 25, but 50 is my main evaluation, and I'll go to 25 once in a while, because you should see no artifacting at 25. It should just be super clean. But 50, you after you play with it for a while, you start figuring out kind of like just to that point where you can take it. Yeah, so that's really important. Any easy ones, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
calibrate,
What's that?
Calibrate, I mean.
Yeah.
I use the i1 Display Pro currently. I used to use Spider. I've seen good neutral photos come from Spider though, the newest Spider. But I like that. When I switched over, I think I saw more neutrality. Yeah,
well, and the other thing is that a lot of the manufacturers are building into the display compatibility with the i1. I have not seen one that has the built-in compatibility with Spider.
Oh.
But the Dells have native built-in compatibility for the i1 to talk to them and access the lookup tables and to write into the 10-bit lookup tables,
Cool.
which is that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of them with Spider compatibility, but
Yeah.
it's possible they're out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So calibrate. Oh, you know what? Man, this is scary stuff. I didn't even know, like years back, but I didn't even know not to go HDMI to HDMI.
Oh,
Back
really?
when that was coming out of a computer. Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so
that's bad.
That's bad.
That's a no-no.
So go, mini display port to display port or whatever, the newest.
Yeah. If you want to if you want 10-bit, you want to use the 10-bit display, and you want to be able to access all the advanced things, the lookup 10-bit lookup tables, and allow the i1 to interface with the display properly. Yeah, it's got to be DisplayPort.
It's got to be DisplayPort. Yeah. Wow. Can you imagine how many people why would they know that? I mean, unless they're a geek about, the cords and how much data is going through and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that was like, gosh, I've been knocking myself out trying to. That's not recent, but it was more recent than I'd like to admit, but it wasn't recent. Yeah. When I found that out, I was like, oh my gosh, who tells you this stuff? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, HDMI, TV, DisplayPort displays.
Yeah, it's darkened monitor, white background, calibrate your monitor beyond the appropriate monitor. Get the right, if you're going to go buy yourself a $3,500 camera or above or something like that, you can afford a $500, $600, $700 probably monitor, $1,000 monitor. That's so critical.
Yep.
What we see.
Yeah. I could not do what I do day in, day out without that.
That's almost as if they didn't do much care with the viewfinder. It was kind of blurry, and your LCD was really bad. You really couldn't see anything.
Yeah,
or something
that's a good analogy.
Well, we use that for soul feedback. Yeah. So how the display is just so utterly, and there is a disconnect between pixels and dots. Prints are overlying dots, and our files are squares. So doing a lot of test printing, you start figuring out, I could push that a little further, or maybe not. Those little things. Yeah.
Yep.
If you don't want to do any of that thinking, just send it to a person like me or Robert.
Yeah, we'll take care of you.
Yeah. Honestly, someone asked me, is there somebody else? I actually know of no one. I don't know of anyone that I would say has your skill set or the same skill set as me when it comes to really fine art printmaking. I'm not saying they're not out there. I'm just saying I don't know who they are. So
thank you.
I would only send them to you. Honestly, I'm just being really honest. It'd be nice because I'm overwhelmed with work often. It'd be able to cool, you're also busy. Look at this. Look at this. I gotta pull way back. Look at this, look at this. Look at the detail. I know it's video, but look at that.
Well, that's because we're a totally non-automated company. We're hands-on, even the ordering. Is I have told people that before. We're hands-on. We want to look at your file. We want to make sure it's massaged perfectly.
Yeah.
A human being that is well versed in analyzing these things day in, day out is going to do that, and we're going to make artistic corrections and with try and interpret the artistic intent of the original person and working. An auto correct button isn't going to do that.
No. True craftsmanship. which is, it's almost gone. Well, there's a little bit, but not much anymore. It's almost all automated with, you know.
Yeah,
It's all automated now.
Yep.
Yeah. So another way to explain that, I tell people, is, you know, he has had a intimate relationship with that printing machine.
Oh, you make it sound...
He knows everything about how it works, the software works, he can tweak the inks, everything, and it's much more complex than people realize, and you have a relationship with it to where you know the characteristics of the different types of prints that you do. You do all kinds of prints other than Lumachrome, but Lumachrome being your flagship, you know, killer print.
Yeah, we do, you know, all the G-clay mediums and canvas and regular photo prints, flex.
Yeah.
We do all that.
But you have this, you know, it's only by hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of images, you just know, hey, I know how that sucker's coming out. You know, the ICC profiles get us close, but there's no such thing as perfection in how these things communicate to each other. So you know that little, that extra stuff. So I remember when I first sent my prints into you a long time ago. When I can't remember when you first started doing Nevada art printers, and I said, "So what do you think?" You know, I was nervous because I knew you were like total guru. And I was like, "Man, I gotta, you know, I've been saying that I know what I'm doing." So I sent it in to you. And you said, well, yeah, it was really good. He says, but you had, you know, a 0.5 whatever color cast in your darker shadow area.
I remember that now.
It was something like that, you know, and I was like, what? You know? So this guy is actually checking my shadows, middle tones, highlights, and you knew you could tell by what was on the display what my artistic rendering was. So you didn't change that, but you saw a color cast in there. Well, you know what? You're dead on right. You're dead on right, because you know what? It's so weird. There's these subtleties that we just can't see, I think, until there's many years of training. Just many, many years. It's like playing a $15,000 classical guitar compared to a $5,000 guitar. You know, you'd have to be playing guitar a long time, and then it's like, whoa, this is so much more incredible than this one. It's kind of like that, I think. But now I'm going back over all my work, and I now realize that there was a certain color cast in my shadows in about 80% of my work that just went totally unnoticed from my brain, not noticing
processing it out.
Yeah, and so every photo I ever work on today, I have a free video tutorial that I send out when people buy my video tutorials that really gets into not just white balance, but color balance. You know, what is the balance of red, green, and blue and their opposites in your shadows, your highlights, and your middle tones, and straightening that out and being conscientious about it. And I think it's about 75% of my images in the shadows, because you can't see them as well, have had different kinds of non-neutral colors that I didn't fully recognize. Does that sound like, would that be a common problem?
You know, one of the first things that I do when I look at an image is I go and I look at the neutrals, because you know, your neutrals may be off, and you don't realize it, but there's something that it isn't quite what you wanted. It's not as clear or as pure or whatever, and you start making other adjustments, which you know you don't need to be making. You know, get the clean, pure tonality right first. And then, I mean, it'll usually open up and start to breathe, and then the other things are more finesse.
That was awesome.
Your neutrals may be off, and you don't realize it, but there's something that it isn't quite what you wanted. It's not as clear or as pure or whatever, and you start making other adjustments, which you know you don't need to be making. You know, get the clean, pure tonality right first. And then, I mean, it'll usually open up and start to breathe, and then the other things are more finesse.
Yeah, That's something a lot of people, they think, well, if my white balance is right and I've got my saturation right, then it should be right.
No.
It's got a lot more room
Yeah.
for improvement. Yeah. I heard a study where they were talking about how people are a little bit more, they think that their Canon gives it, or their Nikon or their Sony gives a certain look to their image, raw. I'm not talking about the JPEGs, just the raw image even after adjusting, and a very high percentage of people. But then they took loads of photographers and they put photos on the wall, and they said, you know, which one looks the best? And the most smallest percentage of people, I mean, it was almost non-existent, actually picked their camera. And they said that they believe that it's more of a mark, you know, they just like Canons or they like Nikons. They think that they like the color, but it's not actually true when it's put to the test. But then part of the study, and I don't know the exact numbers, but it was pretty crazy. But then this is the part that caught my attention, and that is they said that images that had their shadows, middle tones, and highlights, color casts corrected. Like if you want a little bit of blue in your shadow or whatever, that's fine. But there's not just things going on there that you're not controlling. You got the color cast corrected in your shadows, your middle tones, and your highlights. Something like 80 something or more % preferred those images over images that had color casts in them.
Yeah, everything just looks purer and fresher.
Yeah.
And more realistic, because you know, your eye can recognize those things, but you know, you don't. Or I should say, your brain will recognize those things, but you don't necessarily always have the feedback.
This would be a good example because there's shadows in it. Now I'm really conscientious. You know, what is that color that's in that shadow? You know, and is it what I want it to be or whatever? So, yeah, that's awesome.
I see it so much. I pick it up fast.
Yeah, send me an email. I'll give you that video tutorial for free.